Following up after feinting, it's time to look at drawing. These two skills or two tactics are closely allied with one another. Where on the feinting, we were trying to fake, use any sort of upper body motion, hand motion, even leg motions to try and pull our opponent out of a good defensive position. Now, drawing is the more passive of the two. For feinting, we're aggressively, actively trying to do something to try and bring him in with some sort of aggressive, providing him with what appears to be an aggressive offense on our part. Now, with the drawing, what you're going to be doing is having keep your defense tight initially, show them that you have a good defense, and then start gradually revealing a particular portion, a particular target that you want him to attack. So, for example, if we're facing straight on the camera, there you are facing the screen, I got myself up into the long distance stance, or even if we start moving into the tight stance, I'm going to start opening up different target areas, and these are going to be done purposefully with the idea of throwing a trigger in afterwards. So if we were facing each other, moving around the ring, move around the cage, or just facing each other in a sparring drill, I've got my hands in proper positioning, and right now we know the jab could be tough for most of the punches to come in from the outside range. But if I start allowing this hand to drift to the outside, it's pretty clear we've opened up this line to some degree. And it's not going to be as purposive, obvious as that. We just don't stand there and go, oh, there you go, hit this spot. You're going to move around and initially give them what looks like tight guard, and then perhaps start cheating this hand to the outside so they start looking for this range. This range comes in, and then you have to start applying your proper defense, putting a shot on top of it. Same thing can be done with, if you want them to attack the body, start carrying your guard high. I mean, people have a tendency to have lots of bad habits all the time. They may not necessarily be drawing you, that just may be a bad habit on their part. Whenever you start a match, you don't want to be using drawing right up front. You want to be nice and tight because you do not know what this guy's skills are to begin with. You be nice and tight, then figure out what punches you think are your best triggers or the ones most conducive for a follow-up on your part, and then expose the appropriate target on your own body to see if you can force that attack from him. And whenever we say we're exposing the target, it doesn't mean we actually want him to make contact with it. By all means, if I drop this hand to the outside, I don't want him to bite with his cross or his with a hook or anything along the lines. I'm just trying to make him want to reach for it, throw the punch, and then I'll put the defense and trigger on top of it. So again, if I want him to eat the body, we can start cheating the hands high. If we're wanting to go for the head, we might look like you're having yourself a lazy guard. The key is, though, when drawing, what I just did here where I dropped both hands, bad call. I only want to expose one portion of a target surface because if I drop this hand, I've just opened up this target portion here, and I can have a better shot at predicting what he's going to be throwing against me. If I open up the entire head, then it gets to be harder for me to start choosing which defense I'm going to use, and he's got a far better shot of actually being able to land a punch on top of me. So, to draw, start out with good tight defense, and then if you need to use the draw, decide which portion of your triggers you think are best, the ones that you've been able to perform with the most success in your drill situations, and then make sure you draw the ones that you're the tightest with, because there's no sense in drawing something that you feel uncomfortable with. Now, there are three ways to draw. One, as we just said, is to expose a target. For example, I drop this hand, or I raise both my arms up to expose a low position of my body. We can also force. Now, whenever you're forcing to make a draw happen, what you're going to do is you're going to uncover the trigger target, but you keep moving in. So the difference of standard drawing is passive. So if I'm on the outside, let's say I drop this rear hand trying to bait his lead hook. If I'm staying out here and I'm wanting him to lean in to give me that hook, that's a standard draw. But if he's not taking this bait, if I drop this hand and keep walking in with my footwork, I may be popping some jabs, trying to make it look like we're still in the standing boxing game. Difference again, drawing, standing fairly static, staying on the outside, forcing, I keep moving in because he's not taking the bait yet. We want to force him to take the bait. You can also feint a draw. As we know, every time we uncover from a good position, we are, like I just said, you're uncovering from proper defensive position. So if I'm in a nice tight position here, I might start throwing some slower jabs to see if he wants to start eating up one of these exposed lines. So in this sense, I'm using a feint. If the jab bites, good, but I might be a little bit slower on this negative motion to see if I can draw this punch in and then start firing right on top of it. Now, with that in mind, we'll go on and take a look at a few drills, kind of highlight this idea. Then after that, you have these drills after the three-minute rounds. You can throw them away, start creating your own draws after that. As promised, a few drills to highlight how we're going to play with the drawing game. Again, take these drills, do about three-minute rounds with each of them, and after that, you can make up your own drawing drills. Just take a look at any of the trigger punching, find out which punch you want to draw in, open up that target a little bit, and then go to work with it. So this is going to be just a handful here to get the idea. What we're going to do is try and use our footwork to draw this opponent into us. First off, we're going to throw a jab. We're going to have Mitch catch on the jab. So we're going to throw a jab, and I would move out. I would get him used to this pattern. So the jab, move, make him think I'm a cagey fighter. Jab, I'm going to move with him. And I'm probably going to set him up in the rhythm of 2 to 3, you know, work things with triples. So I'm going to jab, move out, jab, move out, and the next time I'm going to jab, but I don't leave, so whenever he steps in, I fire the jab right in his face. So it's going to be jab, out, jab, stay, and then put a second jab right on top of it. So this is an example again. There's no feinting involved. There's no false jab in any of this. You're actually using your jab to set up, getting him used to what your footwork pattern is, making him chase you down. Again, now Mitch isn't stupid. He just heard us describe the drill to you right now, so he understands what's going on, but we would still do this for the entire round. So jab, gone, jab, gone, jab, and then right on top. One more time, jab, right on top. Now we can do, again, the same thing. Use our footwork where he's baiting in. Do the exact same thing. Jab out. And then this time when we throw the jab, when he's stepping back in, instead of doubling up on the jab, putting in a weak punch on top of it, we'll return with the cross. Should make sense at this point. Jab and out. Jab out. Jab, he steps in directly into the rear hand. So, get the idea. Really don't need to see much more of that. It's the exact same pattern, using the triple idea. And the triple seems like, aren't people going to start catching on to using threes to set up these draws or set up the fakes? Not necessarily. It's not that you're running through the entire fight playing a drawing game, and I mean only a drawing game or only a feinting game. Keep in mind, all the ideas we're showing you right now meant to be kind of dosed throughout the fight. Wherever you see fit. It's not going to be start out your fighting thing, I'm going to throw everything in triples. It's just one idea to get someone used to your pattern going back and forth. And lots of the sophisticated thought goes away once the punches are, you start throwing leather at the time. People don't really start counting how often you went in and out each time out. We've done the jab and out, the jab and out. What we're going to also do in this one, we'll turn it around. I use the jab out pattern. This time, whenever I throw the jab, as he's used to be going out, I'm going to step to the inside. So I'm going to the inside of his body, and I'll return with a hook. So we've got jab and out, jab, side step once he follows me in. Now we're doing this in a specific pattern in the sense that Mitch is following me on the third one. And it may not necessarily be the case in the fight. Your job is whenever you find out you got a cagey fighter, you're going to jab and move out until he starts finding the pattern. Maybe he'll follow you on the second one. Maybe he'll follow you on this third one, just as in the drill. Maybe he doesn't follow you to the fifth one, but your job is to keep drawing him in, finding the point to make him come to you and apply what you intended the entire time. So one more time, we'll still do it in a triple pattern just for the sake of the drill. Jab, out, jab, out. Yeah, side step, put that hook on top of it. We'll turn it back around. So we've used the footwork to get this guy to come in and out with us. We could have done the same thing about jab out, throw the hook high. We could jab out, and throw the hook low. We can double up on that hook when he comes in and step to the inside, hook the body, and hook the head. I mean, at this point, I can insult your intelligence. You understand how these drills start coming together and how they're going to work. Now, we've used footwork so far to draw this guy in. We can also draw them in, as we were talking about in the little preamble, the lecture to this portion where we start exposing targets. Now, if I want to bait a rear straight shot for him, for his cross, probably should turn this. Sorry about that, got a lot of do-si-do going on right here. If I want this cross to come in, and God forbid I want a big guy throwing a cross at me, but if he's had good, we've moved around and every time I've thrown he's had good defense, but I have noticed that sometimes when he throws his cross, he might return, might have his minor swim on it, and I think it's something that I can exploit. But the thing is, he's only throwing his cross whenever he thinks he's got a really good target, so I've got to be able to supply that target for him. So what I'm going to do is we're moving around. I'm going to take this lead hand, which is in good position, and start dropping it a bit. And it's not necessarily artificial. A lot of people get fatigued and they do start dropping the hands, or some people start have bad habits anyway and hold the hand down. You're not going to have bad habits. Your hands are going to be up in proper positioning. But while we're moving around, I might start cheating this down. But since it's cheating down, I know what I'm looking for. It's not going to be a jab. His jab can't cross over in this angle. It's not going to be this lead hook. It's a potential to be a rear hook, but think about how easy that's going to be for me to read, because I know I'm looking for this rear hand. If he starts throwing a rear hook, I'm just put that shoulder stop in on top of it. I know it's going to be this arm. His best weapon to this point is going to be this rear straight. So since I know that's coming, let's say in this particular, we've ran through so many triggers against this rear straight. In this case, I'm going to use an outside slip on it. But again, I got this hand out, he throws. Whenever he does throw, I'm just going to take an outside slip with it. Once I have this outside slip, I will return with the hook one more time, which is actually a portion that we used earlier in our example flow drill. But again, we're moving around. Whenever I drop this, he throws outside and right over the top with the lead hook. Now, whenever you're doing this drill, don't necessarily keep it so static, and this is totally artificial. I mean, drawing drills, feinting drills are so far more artificial than anything else, because there's a conceit to it that you're fooling your drilling partner when you told him exactly what you're getting ready to do. Hey, Mitch, I'm going to fake you out. Whenever you fall for the bait, I'm going to hit you, and now you don't remember anything I said, right? So we might move around a little bit. I'm faking this jab with him a little bit, returning back to good position. Whenever he sees me, for the sake of the drill, return to here. That's when that cross comes in. So jab, good position, jab, good position, jab, low. Oh, now I get to return on top of it. This way you can kind of get an alive feel to it, and we're back to that triple rhythm we were talking about. So jab to good position, bait him low, slip, put the hook on top. So that kind of gets you out of that mechanical just standing in front of each other, pretending to be faked out. And once you put the headgear on and start throwing fast anyway, sometimes you can start forgetting where the rhythm comes in. And you want him throwing full bore anyway, so you get an idea if you can really pull off drawing. Because you have to ask yourself that. Do you actually have the speed, the perceptual speed, or the reflex speed? Because it's no good drawing a punch in if you realize, well, shit, he's a lot faster than him, and I just got nailed, and I let him do it. We can draw, like I said, we just drew against him throwing that rear straight. We can draw against all sorts of punches. But let's say we start drawing, we want to draw to the body. We talked about being able to draw to the body, and I said you never really want to lift up, expose too much of a target at a time. The body is a little bit different, because we think about he's got to drop his entire body mass down to throw against my body. It's an easier thing to read. Let's take it back on this side, please, sir. So it's okay for me to start carrying my guard high. This looks less artificial than me just walking around like this. This looks to be pretty obvious that I want him to do something. But a lot of people do start getting their guard up in this position. So at this point, whether he chooses to throw a low jab or a low cross, I'm too far, I'm on the out range, he's not going to throw a low hook from here. I've got a shot to go ahead and drop the forearms down on top of it. We know this was coming in, so I can put either a jab or a cross on top of it right to the head. So we move around, I might give him some probe jabs, coming back to good position, and might start coming back to here. Whenever that low comes in, I close up with elbows and put whatever shot feels appropriate. Since I blocked with the rear elbow, the jab came on top. If I blocked with the lead, the cross would come on top. Again, back to good form, bad form, right on top. Good form, body's covered. I made a mistake, which was actually just drawing them in. Again, these are all basic that we're showing you. It's still just trying to highlight, let me emphasize how to make some of these things happen. If I want to bait in a lead hook, I recognized a flaw in his hook. Now keep in mind, usually when we're trying to bring a punch in, it's one that we've already detected that he has a bit of a flaw in the way he throws the technique. If he throws a loose hook or a lazy hook or a hook I'm pretty sure I think I can beat to the punch, but he's been conservative with throwing it because he's a defensive fighter, well, I want to bring that hook to me. I got to draw it into me. So I got my hands up, and we know the hook has to bite here, so I'm going to start dropping this hand in. I can't make it, well, you could make it obvious. I could put it all the way down to here, but this is really dangerous. Got to make sure I'm exposing just enough to make him interested in what's going on. So when the hook comes in, we're going to do that short inside hook where we violate the rule. Instead of staying over the lead inside ball of the foot, we're going to take it to the rear inside ball of the foot so we can cheat with our own short hook to the inside. Again, to bait this one, we would keep our hands up. We're still like, we can't just walk around the whole time going, here's a bait, here's a bait, here's a draw, see which one he's going to do. We're doing little bit of boxing tools still to make sure he sees techniques. Bam! So we know this is the one that was coming in. Get that long looping whip hook or navy hook. So again, we're just isolate this one portion. If I'm here and I drop this down, he goes for it. I lean back over that rear inside ball of the foot to put the hook in. So I'll put 2 jabs on top, come back to good position. The 3rd jab, I'm coming back to a bad position so he can have that hook. So jab, 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 right here. And again, you've got to trust your speed on this, and I can't emphasize enough whenever you're doing any sort of drawing, you've got to pick, only bait and draw the tool that you're fairly sure you can beat. Now, if you look at, Mitch has got a hell of a lead hook in actuality, and he's a lot bigger man than I am. His hook comes in really, really fast. Actually, with Mitch, I think I would be baiting some rear hooks or perhaps the straight. The straight hits hard, but his lead hook's very good. I really wouldn't bait that in real life. But find the one that you think is the flawed tool in his arsenal, and that's the one you want to draw in and capitalize on. And again, you only need drawing when you've got someone who's being cagey, you've got someone who's playing a defensive game and not coming to you. If he's offensive, there's no sense in opening up any targets, so don't get me wrong. Don't use it against an offensive fighter, use it against someone who's playing a cautious game, a defensive game. Going to take a look at some shuffling drills now. As this material goes on, we started with our foundations, the footwork, stance, so on and so forth, move through your arsenals, combinations. As we move towards the end of this, a lot of the material gets more and more about tactics and strategics, and it gets a little bit more esoteric, but don't undervalue what's going on here. And also at the same time, don't jump right to the end thinking if I get to the advanced stuff, then I'm going to be a whoop-ass boxer. Now, you got to make sure you get your fundamentals down before you can play the end of this stuff. Now, shuffling is nothing more than using tracking footwork to follow an opponent that's already in trouble. This is either when you've already got his back against the cage. You don't have him driven against a cage or against the ropes of the turnbuckle yet. So he's against the ropes, cage, again, moving up against any kind of vertical surface. If we're talking about the street, could be against a wall and such. But we're using strict side-to-side footwork. And here we're going to imagine for a moment, we're going to put an imaginary line behind Mitch. I don't even know if you can see it. There's a seam in the mat. If you can't see the seam, it doesn't matter. If you can have enough imagination, whenever you're doing shadow boxing to picture an opponent in front of you, you can picture a wall just behind Mitch. Now here our stances would be more squared off. Here I've been able to use superior footwork or ring generalship or overwhelming attack, or in this case, just the fact that it's my DVD and I have to tell him he's losing in this fight. We started backing him up, so he's not necessarily in a good straight toe-in stance. He's had to move back to more of a squared off. And when he's squared off, I can't, if he stays right in front of me, I can stay in my toe-in stance and start fighting with him in an infighting or a cornering drill or finishing off. More on that later. But once we get here, a good fighter's not going to want to stay with his back to the wall. I mean, even if it is an imaginary wall at this point, he's going to want to leave. And to leave, he's going to have to go to either side of me. Now, when he starts trying to move to either side, his footwork is more squared off. I start squaring mine off. And this is where we get into shuffling. No matter which direction he goes to, I start stepping and dragging that same direction. So if he starts moving this direction, it's fine. Step, drag, and follow him. Step, drag, and follow. You see, this is really basic. You're thinking, well, why do we have this in the advanced section? Again, because it takes some kind of advanced skill to get a fighter in this position. So initially, your 3-3-minute rounds are going to be something as boring as the fact whenever he shovels this direction, you track directly in front of him. Go right back and forth with him, shuffling back and forth, moving with this, making sure you're obeying the rule about step, drag, step, drag, step, drag, step, drag. You already know how to do this. Now, here's where the thought comes into play. I'm wanting to keep him in this squared off position. I'm wanting to keep him with his back against whatever my vertical surface is, ropes, turnbuckle, a parked car, whatever it is. I don't want him to leave. I don't want him to be able to shuffle and come out from this position. And again, we're not talking about someone who's standing stock still. We're talking about a guy who is trying to escape. So we're using the shuffle to track him laterally back and forth. Now, to keep him in position, I need to not just be following him with footwork, I got to be firing shots at the same time. Now, there's particular shots that work in the shuffling, and that's going to be your hooks. Notice if I'm just moving side to side with them, if I want to throw straight shots, every time I throw a straight shot, I'm going to have to, let me do this directly in the camera, if I'm just moving back and forth in this direction, if I start having to throw punches here, there's going to be nothing on them, and he's actually going to be able to wheel out for being in front of me because my punching pressure's going directly into him, and it makes sense to want to pivot on the outside of the straight arrow that I'm delivering to him. So the hooking angle makes more sense. But here's where it's going to be slightly counterintuitive. Let's say Mitch and I start towards the rear, the back end of this imaginary wall. If we're moving this direction, it would make sense if it looks like he's trying to come out to this side, so it looks like I would want to apply hooks to stop him from coming out this side. The problem is, this is going to be too slow. Soon as I'm going to have to plant, and my inertia is going this direction, then I'm going to have to refire to come back to this direction. That can take too much time. It looks like you would use your footwork to move over and then box him off on this side. What I'm actually going to do is when we're moving in this direction, I'll be firing my hooks off this same direction that I'm traveling. So if I'm moving to my left, it's my right hand that fires and vice versa. We start moving this side, I guess I should be showing this since it's camera side. We're moving this direction. This is the side the hooks are coming from. And it does look like we're just motivating him to continue to move in that shuffling this same direction. That's fine. As long as you stay directly in front of him, keep your offense firing. If you're in a ring, he's eventually going to run into a corner. He's going to hit that turnbuckle. If you've got almost a complete, like in an octagon or a standard circle cage, so you can keep him running along this vertical surface as much as you want and keep firing the entire time. But trust me, whenever you start throwing, if we're going this direction again, and I have to keep planting each time I have to throw this hook, it's going to be a lot slower game. By the time I start planting here to throw it, he has taken his sidestep and he's come off. He's taken himself off the ropes. So your drills are going to be for shuffling 3-minute rounds of just tracking each other back and forth. Switch this thing back and forth. The next would be my turn against the imaginary wall. Then next you're going to track each other back and forth. So I'm chasing him down with low hooks. And keep in mind, I throw those low hooks and we get to violate a rule because most of the time you're supposed to throw a low hook and come up high with something. Here we're just throwing a low hook, just coming back to a nice covered position. And the next time we're shuffling back and forth, we're going to be throwing high hooks. And the next we're going to go back and forth with double hooks. But the key is to keep firing and keep moving the whole time. We're going to do these at a nice low level. So we'll start at this side as he's moving. We're doing low hooks as we throw. He runs the other side. Low hooks as we throw. Back over. High hooks as I throw. The entire time, high hooks. And then double hooking the entire way. The thing is, keep overwhelming offense, and it's basically like you're hurting him. You're not trying to use your arms to keep him in play. I'm going to stay directly in front of him and keep knocking him in the direction that I want him to go to till I can find where the corner is. I find the spot that I really think I can pressure him and keep his back on that surface. Very brief section on pivoting and waltzing. We covered pivoting before as in our footwork section, and as we're not trying to repeat some material on you. We're going to show you how the pivot can be combined with a slight side step to do something called a waltz. This was used by Carpentier. This is first. A little bit of sole. You're good there, Mitch. Whenever we're moving with the pivot, we know it's the inside lead ball of the foot, and we're going to the outside. The waltz will always be done with the pivoting to the outside. We know we can pivot to the inside as well, as we've gone over. Now, the slight difference on this, we'll take a side step to the outside and then put the pivot on it. So that's the waltz step. There's going to be more to it than that, but that's the footwork. Everything else will be done above the body. So side step to the outside, and then you get the pivot around for the waltz step. Now, using big man here, what I'm going to be doing with the remainder of this, I'll tell you what, let's put this angle on the camera right about here. I'm going to draw my opponent in. Unfortunately, we've covered draws, so we know how to get him here. Whether it's a jab, whatever, right now we're going to assume we have the drawing coming in. As he comes to me with his lead step, step and drag, I step to the outside, and then I get my pivot to the outside. So I'm going to lose the word pivot and just say I'm going to give it the waltz step. So as he comes in, side step, and there's the waltz. We'll do that again. He comes in, put the waltz step in here, and the wall step. Again, my hands would be up. I'm getting real lazy with this. Side step the outside. Now the handwork on this, my lead hand, as he comes through, goes in the back of his shoulder, and it just gives him a slight shove by. I'm assisting his angle, assisting his forward momentum. So we'll look at that part. We've got the wall step, lead hand to the back of the shoulder. Here to here. Now the last step on, so far that's the true waltz. It's all, you can see this sometimes in some good boxing, some slick boxers still use this waltz step to get the outside, to get someone crushing and rushing in. You get the step in the outside and waltz it out. If I want to draw them in, we already know how to do that with throwing in 1 and back, 2 and back, 3, and we get the waltz stepping around. Now, one final component the Carpentier used to put on this was to step to the outside as we pull it around using that lead hand. Then he would reverse this hand and pull him back around and fire the rear hook. This is now illegal, but not for you pugilists out there. You can do whatever you want. So we got the jab and back, jab and back. Remember, we're drawing, okay? Jab, there we go. Side step, pivot, use the lead hand, and then come right back over the top with it, turn and put this on top. So let's just look at the handwork right now. So as he steps in, turn, and right back around. So the whole thing together, nice and smooth. Jab, back, jab, side step, and hit. Let's do that one again. Jab, back, jab, step. Man, I tell you what, it pat you on the back of the shoulder there, make sure I'm staying true to the technique. I was letting the waltz take care of it. And keep in mind, as a fact, often when I'm using the waltz, go ahead and step in for me again. This is enough to move. Just use a waltz step to get out of the way. Matter of fact, those of you familiar with some of the other stuff you see Corey Hayes, Corey uses the waltz step all the time without the hand hit. I used to use the hand hit all the time, but he's so successful with those long albatross arms. Without it, I started doing it as well. But let's keep it true and put the hand on here. So he steps in, put the hand on top. So going to put the waltz step, hand on top, turn him back for the hook, and right back in on top. So really, the waltz is nothing more than Eddie's. The waltz is nothing more than doing a side step to a pivot, lead hand to assist to continue him on by, and or putting the hand back on top of the front of the shoulder, turning him back around for the rear hook. And you can take it any one of those steps, and you can use them independently. You can just use the side step as we know. You can do the side step to the waltz step and just be totally out in the clear, or you can use the lead hand to guide them on by and be in the clear, or you can put that final offensive shot on top, which is pretty sweet, so why not go ahead and train it? I'm going to talk briefly about cornering. Once you get your man, we talked about shuffling back and forth, getting this guy caught on the against the ropes, against the cage wall, against any kind of vertical surface. If you do happen to have the benefit of having a corner, for example, in a boxing ring, a pride ring, or whatever, that's the time to finish someone. That's the time to go to work with combinations. You know, I don't have Mitch out here right now because we already covered how to do a lot of this work. We're talking about ring generalship. You're always commanding the center and trying to get your opponent's back as much as you can, maneuvered, moving with his back to the ropes, the cage, whatever your vertical surface is, and then using shuffling as you're running along the straight edge until you can find that corner. So it's the shuffling that will get the man to the corner. Now, you can use drills just along the lines of where you're both moving around. You're using, I highly advocate using a drill where if you've got enough ring surface or a gym floor surface, you're moving around, you do keep the center all the time, and you keep this pressuring back. There's no punches being thrown yet. You're just using your footwork to constantly dominate and drive, cut the ring off by using your shuffling, not letting this guy come into you. For example, if you and I are playing the game, we're moving around. If you start side-stepping this direction, we got to start shuffling with you until we keep moving you in, backing you up, and getting you against the wall. If we're at the corner, we keep you there, go to work with using our combinations. If we're just against the back, against the wall, or against the ropes, then we move into the shuffling using the hooks we discussed earlier to get them over in the corner. Now, once you get in the corner, that is where you tee off. You got to go to work on your combinations, throw as much as you've got. Remember, if you can't remember 6, 7-point combinations, you don't have to. Throw in multiples of 3 combinations, but constantly throw your 3 points again and again. That turns into 6s and 9s and 12s, so on and so forth. But the key, again, on cornering is commanding the center of the ring, getting his back against the vertical surface, then shuffling, and then using your hooks to get him there, and then tee off and finish. Now, once you get in tight to finish, you've got to keep two considerations in mind. One is, even though he's in trouble, essentially, to put himself in the corner, we've seen lots of people get in the corner and can eventually work themselves out of it, just like we did in the shuffling. You want to use your straight shots, uppercuts, hooks, everything you can to keep the guy there, but keep in mind, it's primarily your hook punches that will keep this guy boxed into this corner area. So everything you've got, make sure you're constantly throwing hooks out on both sides. If I'm only throwing hooks on this side, and we get an imaginary corner right here, and again, you're going to have a good imagination. If you can shadow box at this point and picture an opponent, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If I'm only throwing hooks here, we've opened up this line. So I can throw hooks here and put a little bit of a sidestep in front of this area so I can block off this area as well. But just as easy as to throw hooks on each side, counter revolutions, and make sure the hooks are working from both sides. Or if I feel really strong about using my lead hook to finish, be the lead hook, sidestep a little bit in front with the opposite leg. If I feel better about the rear hook, then I'm going to sidestep a little bit in front with the lead leg. So we got to talk about boxing and containing the guy in there. When I say boxing, I'm actually talking about cutting him all the way off, keeping him in that one confined spot. The other consideration is, it is time to finish him. And you want to stay with overwhelming offense, but at the same time, you got to keep in mind you can't punch yourself out, because some people will just shell up and they can take a lot of punishment at that time. Now we're going to talk about infighting and talk about whenever you got someone who really does shell up, how to open up some more opportunities for offense. But just because I said don't punch yourself out doesn't mean I want you to get conservative when you're on the inside. Make sure your conditioning will support being able to finish someone off once you get into the corner. We're going to talk about being caught on the ropes. A few considerations, and we're going to give you a handful of drills to play with. We already know that how to get someone on the ropes. We talked about shuffling and cutting off the ring and doing some cornering drills. Of course, your key, your goal is not to be there. We know your goal is to be in the center of the ring and or driving someone back. But if you're on your way, you need to know something how to get out of this. First off, despite how great a fighter Ali was, and there's no doubt about that, I do not believe in fighting off the ropes or off a cage surface whatsoever. You don't need to be there. That places you purely in defensive mode. You want to be offensive, or at least in a neutral position where you're both having to snipe from the outside range. So it requires too much energy to have to mount your offense from a defensive position, because you're spending most of your time trying to get out of that trap position. The time to move is, whenever you realize you're getting too close to the ropes, is always. You're supposed to be right here in the center of the ring. We know that's where you're supposed to be with your ring generalship. So sometimes I'll hear coaches advocate. I mean, this is true. This is not. You've gone too far whenever you hear the bottom strand of rope hit your calf. Now we don't have a rope in here. We don't have a cage wall in here. You don't need one. Again, at this point, you can understand exactly what I'm talking about. If I'm stepping backwards and if the lowest rope strand catches my calf, it is time to move. It was time to move way before that, but that tells you that you're at the last ditch effort. It's time to get out of there. Now, if it's a cage wall, you step back and the cage hits your rear heel, again, it's time to move. You've gone too far. Do not allow yourself to get pressured back and move into a rope-a-dope or your back all the way against a cage surface and then try and escape from there. It is possible, but it's not advisable. You're trying to make sure that you hold the center as much as possible, constantly drive your opponent backwards, and you get him the position you want him to be in. But remember the little mnemonic, if you feel the rope, you feel any kind of the rear surface on you, it is time to get out of there. Now, whenever we're talking about, it's best to have your best defense is going to be preemptive about the entire thing. We've talked about being able to hold the center the entire time. While you're being driven back, the other key is do your best not to be driven straight back the entire time. For example, if we're facing each other and we're sparring, and I realize you're coming at me with a good offense, or I'm playing cagey with you, a big problem is people constantly moving in this linear fashion, moving straight back. Even if you know the rule about feeling the rope on your calf or your heel against the cage, not good enough. If we're driving back, we need to constantly be moving back and to either side so I can come back to that center. If you're always thinking about the center of the ring, you're in good shape. Matter of fact, I advocate, actually in here on this floor, they've got an X on the floor. I mean, it was here whenever we got here. Whenever you have your gym service, your ring, your cage, find where the exact center is so you can always have your attention on that. So whenever you realize that you think you're starting to get in trouble, you got to wheel out and get yourself back to center. Or at least if you're driving your opponent back, make sure that your back is always facing that X while you drive your opponent to the rear. Again, you can't be moving in this linear fashion, and a lot of people fall into this habit whenever they have a large class group size, because they'll do combinations going forward, then it's your opponent's turn to move you back, and just because of the nature of the drill, because of space considerations, people start working in a linear fashion, and to some degree, that was some of the holdover from fencing, moving straight back and forth. Your job, though, is to always, if you're moving back, be moving to the side. If you're moving back, be moving to the side the entire time. That will take care, to a large degree, of any problem of ever being caught on the ropes. Now, there are a few drills you can play with beyond just using your standard footwork and moving around to get off the ropes. One is just, if you are being driven back, again, we're going to put an imaginary cage wall right here, right around here. You can picture it. Where my rear heel is, we'll take care of it. First one, we're just going to give names to some fighters who use them to great effect, even though people have been doing these all the time. One is an Archie Moore drill. As he's coming in and he's driving me back, before I can let him, for this is imaginary service, before I let him drive me all the way upright, where my weight is coming from 50-50 to my weight gets on this rear leg, I need to go into him. I'm going to lean into him, I'm going to put my forehead on his breastbone if I can, or at least lean in where I can, muffle going in if I have to. Whenever I lean in, I'm giving him a little bit of a drive back. So I'm actually pushing off with his rear leg to push into him. Once I've pushed into him, then I'm going to work on doing some of this sidestepping and getting away from him. Now, once we're in here, I could go ahead and start. I should have sidestepped earlier, but if I start sidestepping right now, I could be walking into one of these hooks we talked about that he would be using if he's got good shuffling technique. So he comes into me, I've got to lean into him, give him a little bit of a push, and then start walking out of it. This push backwards, as we already know, one of the defenses against a hook, if he throws a lead hook and I put a little bit of a stop on it, it takes some stink out of that hook. So my job is to use the head to butt him a little bit, to shove into him, so that's the time to step out. If he's right here and I start stepping out now, these are really going to hurt bad, all right? So he comes into me, I got to lean into him and out. Hurt bad was the best analogy I could think of. He's in here, he's driven me back against the imaginary wall. I got to lean in, bump him a little bit before I come out. I suggest spending several rounds of letting while you're boxing, occasionally you'd be doing, it could be a flow drill, and occasionally say, all right, I want you to give me some drive back, and whenever you feel the mnemonic of the rope or the cage, then pick out which drill you're going to do, let him tee off on you a little bit in the corner, then bump him and take that side step, and do your training partner the same courtesy. Another drill to play with is just every time you're being driven back, before you even hit the rear surface or the rear or the bottom rope, is to retreat and sidestep immediately. So, for example, let's turn around this way. I'll have my back to the camera. As Mitch is driving me back, long before I even get the rope, this is just another drill to highlight what I'm talking about. As he's driving me back, I need to constantly think about moving out of line. We might actually play on a line. We could chalk a line if we wanted to. You don't need to, as people, you understand what a line is. As he's driving me back, my job is to not keep driving back straight along in a linear fashion. It's one thing to tell people not to drive straight back, but another thing is to actually train it, make sure you understand it. So every time we're doing little boxing drills and he's driving me, I gotta make sure I'm going to either side with it. We get back on that line, he's driving me back. I'm making sure I might go back 1-2 shuffle steps and then break off to either side. So your first drill with the Archie Moore drill, lean into him. Second drill, stay away from that, your vertical surface, and make sure as he drives back, get your side step in. Now we've got a Jersey Joe Walcott drill, which is just, he always like to take a nice little turn to the inside and then then have a step out. Now he didn't necessarily get his head in all the time. And to keep in mind, boxers would kind of will always interchange some of these ideas, and they don't necessarily, it doesn't mean they've invented these techniques. I'm just trying to highlight some fighters who used some of these ideas to good effect. As he's coming in, we're talking about a turn to the inside. We already know that if he's going to start shuffling, we know that he's going to try and shuffle to prevent me, keep me in one particular spot. Right now, as he's driven me back, the lead hook is going to be nice and strong. Rear hook is going to be even stronger. Once he squares me up and he squares up, these are going to equalize out in power. So if I am going to take a side step and get out of here, I'm going to move to the inside, because right now, since he's not squared up, this is going to be the strongest one. So as we are getting the move back, I feel my heel hit the surface or the rope hit my calf, we drive back, I got to wheel in this direction. So when I'm saying wheel, another word for the pivot, on that inside ball of the foot, get a turn, and then get the side step out. So as we're driving me straight back, I got to dig in right here and get the turn. You're going to see some of these drills will start overlapping. As he comes in, there might be some Archie Moore into it and bump and wheel and turn to the outside. But it's nice to kind of work them independently as well. So he's driving back, dig in, and get that wheel out turn. A real, one more drill to play with is be the Jim Jeffries crouch cover. Did the same thing about wheeling to the inside. The difference though, where Jersey Joe was able to stay up because he would wheel to the outside and start going to work right over the top. Jeffries, whenever he's being driven back, let alone he had such a curious guard stance anyway, but still this can be fairly effective if you find yourself getting overwhelmed. That's why I'm putting this as your last drill for it. If he drives in, it's similar to putting the head on the chest, but he didn't necessarily always have cohesion. As he's being driven back, he realized he's getting close to the ropes. Just drop completely, get a nice deep crouch, and then his wheel out would come from here. Now it can be effective if you're not too worried about the knees, but if you stay with a nice cage cover up in your the overhands, you can still drop in some bomb shots with the hammer. Got to be careful about that. But as you're being driven back, we're talking deep crouch and then turn to the outside. So the difference is with the Jersey Joe, you're staying up high while you get the wheel, and on the Jeffries, it's going to be down and to the outside. So you got the Archie Moore, you get the idea of using the ring generalship about always trying to stay in the center, never moving in a linear or lateral fashion, trying to constantly take some side steps. And then we talked about just staying upright, as Jersey Joe Walcott would do, and take your wheel to the inside, and then get that crouch on top of it with the Jeffries. Play with those because remember, your job is not to ever have your back to the ropes, but you've always got to train for that contingency. Talk about infighting now. Infighting is a lot of fun. We've already run across an infighting arsenal. It's going to be all your short hooks, your shovel hooks, and your uppercuts staying on the inside of the body. Some considerations. I mean, the infighting, I'm going to give you a few drills to play with, but mainly a lot of it's just some conceptual things to keep in mind. Infighting is obviously working from a nice, tight, inside position. We're all the way here. We're inside. We've got to be in our cage position. You've got the close range stance. And once you get here, you've got to be prepared to work inside all of your opponent's looping and hooking blows. And that's all he's got. You can't throw short, straight shots from here. I mean, you can, but there's going to be nothing on it. This doesn't hurt, and him banging me back, there's nothing on it. So once we're in here, every time he throws a looping shot, I got to be prepared to come to the inside of that. So whenever he moves to throw one of these open hooking shots, I'm coming with a shorter one to the inside. When you're also inside, if you got someone who's wanting to shell up and he's not throwing punches as often as you would like him to, he's not opening up opportunities for you, you can actively push his arms away from his body. I'm not talking physically, you open up and you see me doing something along these lines. If we turn a little bit, I'll work on this arm. We're here. You see this? A little bit of a bumping out with the arm, bumping to the outside, working, actually punching against the arms, to moving these things out of the way. Play with that idea for a few rounds where you're going back and forth. I'll stay in tight. I'll move an arm and hit. He can move my arm and hit at the same time. Just constantly moving, working around him. I mean, it's a great game to play with, but also while you're inside, so far we've been pretty lax about movement because I'm talking all the time. But while we're in here, short rhythm is going to be the key. We know short rhythm is going to be that lateral motion. We've also shortened our stance up a little bit. It gets a little bit more square. So while we're inside, we're just not staying here banging away. There's lots of head motion all the time. You got to think about an early Mike Tyson, you're going back and forth because even though you're close, it's easier to find the target, easier to hit, but you'll be surprised about how much just putting this looping motion, wagging motion with the head back and forth makes it even harder for your opponent to find your chin. While you're infighting, we're close. We're in tight. This guy. I'm going to have Mitch drop his arms when we see what's going on. You'll see my head looking for his chest. No, Mitch would infight same way. He would put his head towards my chest. But here's the difference. Where before, we were trying to come off the ropes, we put the head on him. We're trying to give him a little bit of a butt backwards so we could take some of the sting off of his punch. When we're here, we're touching our head to the chest, but it's light. It's just a little bit of bumping. I'm trying to maintain my own body weight. I'm not actually driving him forward in this manner because it's going to make it easier for him to snap me down, spin me around. It's just enough to take him a little bit off base, and so I can cut off his punching room. So usually the guy who's all the way on the inside, he's going to have the best shots for his uppercuts and his hooks and his shovels. So when you get the head on there, it's not a big push. I recommend playing this with a heavy bag drill, where you get your heavy bag Whenever you got your heavy bag set up, get in front of it, put your head on the bag, and a slight push in. If you're taking this bag out of plumb, you're pushing too hard. Stay in there, keep your head on that bag the entire way, get used to throwing your punches from there. And the same thing, real quick heavy bag note, when you're hitting a heavy bag, if it starts swinging, okay, you're probably not hitting it right. That's pushing a punch. You want it to be indented. You want to get the bag to fold to some degree or leave slight indentations. We don't want to push any of our punches. We want to snap every single one of them. So again, the head is just kind of a light touch. I mean, right in here. You can tell, I'm not driving Mitch back along these lines. We're just in here trying to stay tight, miming out getting these shots. And again, I can't say enough, your main weapons are going to be all your angled shots because the straight shots really don't have any place in here, except going to violate that rule in just a moment. When a couple of drills to play with when you're inside, one's just called riding. When we get in here, we get Mitch back up into good boxing position. When he throws a lead uppercut, I want to ride with it. If you recall that we did a chop down block, we did forearm blocks and glove blocks against uppercuts. I'll just do a ride on this side so we see what's going on. When he throws this lead uppercut, I put my uppercut down as a chop block and then continue right up his forearm and then deliver my own uppercut. We'll do that a few times slowly. He throws and in. And obviously, this is the sort of thing that's happening in the chaos of the fight. You're in here just firing back and forth. The uppercut comes in. You're letting your forearms ride along his. Same thing with the rear uppercut as that's coming in. My lead arm comes in and puts the ride in on top of it. Now, a good way to run the drill with it, he'll throw this lead uppercut, his rear uppercut, and I'll ride both of them. So we're here. And we move it around a little bit. An entire round of me getting the ride in on him. I'm going to do this for three-minute rounds. We reverse it and let him do it. And that way, when you first start out and you tell people to do rounds of infighting, they kind of get confused. They're like, okay, we just lean at each other and beat the hell out of each other. You got to kind of stair-step it and go, okay, here's a drill for you. Get the riding down. Get comfortable with that. And that way people start feeling more at ease with the infighting concept because you will get hit when you're on the infight. There's no doubt about it. Let's do-si-do it here again. There's another infighting concept to play with called climbing the stairs. If we want to open this guy up for more ideas, I'm going to bang the body to lower his guard a little bit. It doesn't even necessarily have to be this big where he opens up a nice head target. Just enough to keep him thinking about this. Now, how you can start setting up hooks and such. If I get here, we just talked about me never wanting to throw a straight shot from here, but there is a place for it. If I can get him to lower his guard enough, in this case I'm turned slightly, if I get him to lower this against an uppercut along the lines, I use this hand to throw across against his shoulder to turn him. Then we apply the hook. This is called climbing the stairs because what we've done is we went from a low level, hit him at a medium, and then went up high. Then you can reverse that. If we over here we realize if this is the arm that drops down, we bang it low to make him drop. Then we we throw a hook or a jab directly into that shoulder, and then we come over the top with our rear hook. So slowly on this, I'm working low to get him to open up for me. We'll play with this shoulder here. Low, 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 low. Open him up. And hit. We'll stay on this side, we see what's going on. So we see it's opposite. Work low to make him open up something. There's the exposure, then bang it. How this exposes jawline and right on top. We'll stay on this side. Get the idea. Bang, bang, bang. Get the idea. Fairly simple there. Now, we've talked about infighting. If you decide, hey, I don't want to infight anymore, I've been here and I felt too much, this guy's got good skills, it's time to get rid of him. How to get rid of an infighter. I'm saying we should keep the idea of we're going to do what is called a push-off and a shelling up. Now, if I would get in here and realize, hey, he's overwhelming on me, the shell up is going to be nothing more than taking my short-range stance, which was building that cage, getting more of a crouch in my stance, keeping my elbows in tight, where I have my forearms parallel, they still are. We're going to pinch them together even tighter. And I do have my head, I'm trying to work my head towards his chest, but if I'm on the inside, my head's touching his chest, I'm winning. I need to keep throwing. But if he's as tight on the inside, I got to keep the shell up as much as possible. So while he's throwing, go ahead and throw something. You see, I got to keep everything nice and tight. And I decide I've had enough of this shit. I got to get rid of him. Both hands are going to have to hit his shoulders. I'm doing this nice and slow right now. Both hands have to get on the shoulders. I'm going to push him slightly forward. This isn't going to be enough because one, if you're doing standard boxing, you got to keep in mind, if I'm just pushing straight out, look at everything I've just opened up. No good. I just can't do a static push-off and get rid of him. So both hands initially go to the shoulder. Then my rear hand will go over to the backside of his lead shoulder. My lead hand stays on the front of his rear shoulder. So we started with both hands in a pushing motion. So this hand stays in the same place, and this hand switches to here, and it's a counter revolution. This hand can push, this hand gives a slight pull, and this brings me out. So it starts as a push, immediately turns into a turn. So over here, you show up, both hands in, switch, and slide turn. I mean, we're not talking you have to spin this guy all the way around. Of course, with our size difference, he'd probably spin me, but it's enough to take him off base. So if he's in here, he's throwing some shots, and I'm showing up, I'm like, well, shit, this is, I gotta get out of there. It's surprising
yeah,
to turn in it.
Really throws you.
Because he's trying to do counter revolution, he's throwing his shots. Lots of times, his hook is going to assist the motion. So one more time, he's in, you push, get this switched, push here, and pull. Now you gotta start out with a push. I can't just lay my hands on him and then expect this to work. My first thing's gotta be a push into him because that makes him come back to me to some degree. It's him coming back to me that assists this motion. So we'll stay in, he's throwing some punches. Just enough to turn him off base, and you know the same time I turn him, I leave him at the same time. While I'm leaving, I'm thinking about having the hands out in case I need to muffle. So, infighting, it's a dangerous game, but it's a useful game, but make sure you stair step it. Just don't start your training or your fighter's training where you say, put on the headgear, get in there and start wailing away. Make sure people feel comfortable with some of the tactics and strategy on the inside before you just say, hey, balls to the wall. Gotta take your time with it, because this could be too daunting, kind of scare some of your fighters off of the game. Let's talk about clinching now. Now we got to keep in mind there's two ways to go with clinching. Clinching in boxing and pugilism is different from clinching in wrestling. Now, if you're an NHB player, you got to figure out which game you're wanting to play at that particular portion of the fight. Clinching in wrestling is fantastic. You can turn it to wonderful offensive opportunities, and you also need to have a great defensive game on it. Clinching in boxing is purely a defensive tactic. Clinching can stop you from winning a fight, but it's never going to make you win. No one ever said won a fight because, oh, I had a wonderful clinch. You can hear about a great clinch in NHB from good wrestlers, but no one ever said, boy, that guy sure can't clinch in boxing, and that's why he wins. No, it just stopped you from getting hit momentarily. I don't advocate clinching in a straight striking game just simply because you're going to expend so much more energy trying to get to that clinch, trying to maintain and stop from getting hit. It'd been better off to use your footwork to keep them at bay, use your defensive arsenal, go back to your triggers. You know, if you need to clear the cobwebs, just get on your bicycle and use ring generalship where you can. But if you are going to clinch, make sure you can do it properly. Keep in mind the clinching we're going to show, even though some of the end result might look similar to some of the grappling material, we're still far too upright. Our footwork isn't the same. So again, this is clinching is applied only for the pugilism and the boxing game. Now, whenever you're going to clinch, you got to make sure there's kind of a breaststroking motion to it. It's going to be kind of a slide-in drill. I'm going to do these things very slowly. If we're here and I realize I'm in trouble, I need to clinch with this guy, the lead hand is going to come out first. I'm not going to go out with both hands at the same time. I'm going to refrain from poking you in the eye like I just did as well.
It's a dirty box.
Yeah. Lead hand comes out, then the rear hand comes out. And these things are coming right on one at each other. We're going slow with it. Now, as I go out with the hands, if I can realize I can split his hands, this is what I need to do. If I'm coming to the inside of his hands, see him opened up. We can probably see this in the overhead right here. If I get my arms to the inside, no good. I got to make sure that, I got you again. Inside and inside. Once I realize I'm in the inside position, I'm going to go to him. I'm going to overhook on this side. And on this side, turn around. The far hand, I can't get to an overhook yet, so I got to his shoulder, and I'm going to do an arm slide. I'm kind of sliding down to his arm. Now, I want an overhook over here, but you see, I'm not going to be able to pull him into this. He's going to want to be banging these ribs right now, so I got to take a step to my outside and run to that arm. So the key is go to the inside, hook this up. We'll turn this around now. His hand is here, and we know he's going to want to punch. It's going to be like doing that riding we did earlier where we rode in with an uppercut. I'm going to be following in with my forearm as I go to this arm. I'm trying to get a nice loop on this arm. And there's nothing pretty about it. It's not nice and tight like you can do in standard boxing. But again, as we're right here, we feel like we're in trouble. We slide, run to the outside, and get this hook over the top. And again, wherever you hook up, it's going to be catch as catch can in the sense that if you get this hooked up, terrific. If his arm's caught in between, terrific. You're just trying to monitor against his arms. Now, when you're clinching in wrestling, there's a tendency for your opponent to clinch back. If you're just doing a standard wrestling clinch, if I start doing this, Mitch starts clinching back with me, and things are pretty sweet. And then occasionally you watch an NHB, someone will think, oh, I should strike now. You'll see the knee come up. It almost seems to be an afterthought. And the knee's probably going to be your best choice at that point. But in boxing, it's going to be a lot harder to get to the clinch because people, that's all they're thinking about. They're wanting to hit the entire time. So your clinch can have a little bit more of a cluster feel to it because he's still trying to throw when you're trying to run and maintain that arm. And you got to think about it. If you listen to the breathing from both of us already, you're expelling, like I already said, more energy trying to clinch this guy than you would have if you just got on your bicycle, got away from him, and got your head back. If you have a hard time getting that overhook clinch position, you can just go to a biceps right clinch. So same thing, I'm reaching out to come to the inside, and let's say I'm too far out, I can't get this true overhook, I can't get all the way to the inside because as I start to go to him, he starts stepping back because he doesn't want to clinch. He knows he's winning, he wants to keep punching me. So I'm coming to the inside, he starts stepping back. This lead hand goes in the bicep, my rear hand's looking for the bicep at the same time. I want a tighter clinch, so I'm coming in, but he's stepping back, so I ride the bicep. Now at this point, we'll move it up, I can decide to continue to ride on into him and get the overhook, or it might be just enough to stop his punches momentarily for me to back up, get the hell out of dodge. So we're here, I wanted the initial one, he's running away from me, right on the biceps. So we're here, reach, he runs, right on his biceps. If you do attain a tight clinch, we're talking about where you do get the overhook positions here. A couple of ways you can make it tighter. One is just do arms included, body hug, or you just come all the way around. Look, I actually made it.
Hey, all right.
There you go. If I can make it all the way around and hug him here. We're not taking each other down here if we're doing straight boxing stuff. I'm just trying to control his arms, and if it is straight boxing, the ref's definitely going to break you up at that point because they know the fight is straight boxing. It's like, well, you stopped it there. You're just trying to save your life and bore the spectators. You can also just do a double overhook, which is more common to see. We get to this, once I get to my tight clinch, I'm just overhooking both arms. If I can clasp my hands together, we can see that. That's all the better. It doesn't have to. We can just bring him in tight, not let him have his arms back. So we know from the tight clinch, I have my choice of running all the way in and getting a body lock, which is a formidable task on someone this weight difference with me, or I just get the overhook on his arms to stop him from hurting me. Now we got to talk about getting rid of the clinch. We already know, like you're saying, how do you stop a clinch? You stay on the inside. Every time he's reaching in, and you start going to your infighting game, and don't let him get to the inside of your arms. But let's say you've applied your clinch, the ref's not breaking it, or you decide you don't need to be there, you feel like you're still taking damage inside the clinch, or you're playing an NHB game, you initially did clinch, you initiated it, you were just doing it to clear your head, it's time to get rid of the fighter. So once we're to the inside, we give you 3 different ways to get rid of it. One is just the shove out. I'll get one hand on his shoulder, I'm gonna move this one first, this hand on the shoulder, and it's not really me pushing him away, but in case you haven't noticed the difference here, this guy's 250, 260, me pushing him away doesn't really happen. I'm going to extend my arms and step away from him. So slowly, I'm not pushing him, I'm just extending, these arms are acting as a muffle. So even if he starts to throw a punch from here, I can monitor those shoulders on the way out. But it's a big difference. It's not me going, watch, I'm not sending him away from me, I'm going away from him. That's the intention. We can also spin out of clinches. We've got 2 ways to do this. One is with a short drag. And in this case, I will take my lead hand, which is on this overhook side right here. I could have both overhooks here. I could have this overhook and a biceps right here. On this short drag, what I'm going to do is nothing more than take this arm. I'm going to pull on this arm. And as I'm pulling and turning him past, this hand comes to the back of the shoulder. This looks a lot like that little waltz step we did earlier. Turning him out of the way as we move. So we're hooked up in here. I'm going to decide, hey, it's time to go. So it's a short drag. It's nothing more than me taking his arm across in between our bodies, and this hand comes by to assist. So at the same time I'm doing it, though, I'm still doing that, leaving it. I'm not trying to stay on top of him and let it just be my massive body size versus him to get rid of him. So again, we're here, short drag, pull on that arm, push on his shoulder to get rid of him. I can also, at this point, do what's called a post and turn. I'm going to post In this case, where I've decided I started to do the short drag, but you see his arms caught right here? If I start to do this pull through, and I realize, no, he's clinching back with me now, and I can't get rid of this guy, and I want the clinch to be done. I cleared my head, and I think it's time to get out of this, but the short drag, forearm's in the way. Even if I start stepping back, he's been tracking with me. So the difference here is this hand will now come up on top of the shoulder. So I'm going to push on his arm. We'll drag with this side now. So I'm going to push here and drag. It's very similar to what we just did. Then I bring this hand to the side and we double tap and turn him away. So the first one has less movement involved with it. If I can clear this one immediately and just use the short drag and turn, that's what I want. But if I start the short drag and turn, I realize, oh hell, he's with me here. I'm going to have to push right here and double tap in that shoulder to get him turned out of it. So you got to make your choice. First one, short drag, easier to work, but he's not cooperating with me. Post, short drag, and double tap in that shoulder, get him turned out of play. Okay, we're getting to the end of this thing. It's about time at this point. I have no idea what the running time is, but I'm told it's 63 days. At this point, we're going to start playing with some ideas about putting it all together. Keep in mind, so far, the only piece of boxing equipment you've seen me on a partner is focus pads, because this is going to be really the most valuable, beyond your shadow boxing, this is going to be the most valuable piece of equipment there is. And trust me, there's tons of drills to be done on heavy bags and all the light bags and such. But again, if we included that vocabulary, what we have in our drills here, again, we're taking this thing up to a decade's worth of material, so there's no point in doing that, at least not at this date. There are many different focus pad drills you can play with to start putting some of these ideas together. I'm going to give you a couple of handfuls of drills to play with. Just going to give you some minor examples of how you can make these work. I'm not going to spend entire rounds on them, probably no more than 8 to 10 seconds, just so you get the idea of how to play with them. And again, go ahead and rest those hands. We talked about the 3-minute rounds to work with things. That is, you're using those as you are learning a piece of material. Then later on, when you start moving these to these sorts of focus pad drills, then you're not necessarily working on a single piece of material. It's up to your feeder. The guy holding the focus pads, he's calling the drill for you, and he's calling the techniques for you. He's calling the combinations for you, and he's also able to start forcing you around the ring, making you do what he wants you to do, and it gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to be alive with the material instead of just going initially when you're drilling things. You have one goal in mind. Here you can kind of get to fuzz the edges and see how you can start putting it together, still with a little bit of a targeted focus going on. First drill we're going to play with is just a technique drill. This is how you would play with everything. Every drill we just showed you, we would just go back to the beginning and say, hey, let's work on me throwing a cross to a lead hook. Now, I'm doing his talking right now. That's what he just said to me.
Cross lead hook.
Very good. So every time he feeds it, give a cross lead hook. It's going to be slow and controlled. Initially, he can be calling speeds to me. He can be saying quarter speed, half speed, 3/4, all the way up to full. But in this case, I'll dictate about a half speed pace right now so I can keep the talking going. But we're on the same thing. Cross lead hook. And again, this drill is just called technique drill, and it's what we've pretty much been doing throughout this entire bit of material. You're constantly just throwing again and again and again, trying to hone that piece of material. After you've got a technique drill down, you've worked it many times, and you think you understand how it works, then you stair step it into what's called a checking drill. He can still call the technique or the combination for me, but the difference is occasionally he will fire back. Keep in mind the edges of these are like plywood. Hit me with the flat of them. He can swing back. He can come straight in at me. He can throw some hooks and stuff. But this is to make sure if I'm doing this exact same drill, let's say I'm doing the cross to the lead hook, but if I come back to a lazy position, he's going to slap me with. He's going to swing to the side. He can slap to the body. That's a checking drill. So we go from technique drill to firing. Checking drill is next. Same thing. You get the idea. And again, he's slapping back at me. He's being kind. He's slapping at a kind of a low-key pace because we found that with this particular brand of focus pads, these are basically plywood with a thin sheet of fabric over the top of them. But still yet, the best thing to do for the drill is to be slapping back. Make sure you understand. Let's do a couple more. Put some slap on it so we can make sure and make sure people understand we do justice how the drill works. You get the idea. You're throwing, you're still working your exact same technique, but we added a new component to it. Next drill you start playing with is, we know there's weight classes in boxing, all the combat games. A lightweight drill. Lightweights are noted for their speed. I'm not necessarily noted for my speed. I'll go ahead and tell you that right up front. But you still want to play a lightweight drill where it's nothing about, it's all about your speed. So what we're throwing right now, let's say it's just going to be that jab to the lead hook, the cross to the lead hook. We're not doing the checking portion of the drill, even though we can combine that in there at any point we want. But my job is while we're standing here is to see how quickly I can tee off on that combination. I have no concern for power at this point while we're moving around. And again, you want to take all your techniques and run it through every variation of drill so you can find which combination or idea you are very powerful with, which ones you're very fast with, and just as important, which ones you're weak with, which ones you're slow with. At the same time, while I'm doing the lightweight drill, he could have been throwing checking the entire time. But again, we're still segmenting these to get the idea. Now, if there's a lightweight drill, there should be a heavyweight drill as well. Speed is still of a concern, but less so. My job is to tee off and make this like a Sunday punch, where I slam these little tiny gloves into these pieces of plywood. Do the same thing with the cross and the lead hook. And my job on these is I want him to feel impact. We talked earlier about a heavy bag drill. I'd rather have the bag dent than swing it away. So if I throw this and push too much and his arms fly away from me, that might mean I've done impact, and it might mean I'm just pushing my punches. I'm more concerned with giving a nice, focused, tight impact and still coming back to good recovery, and my feeder can let me know if it's good power or not. So again, it's more about the Sunday punching, less about the speed here. Same thing, cross, lead hook. You get the idea. So you've gone through, you've done your technique drill, you walked it through nice and slow, learned what's going on. Checking drill to see if there's holes. Then lightweight drill, and the same technique. Speed, heavyweight drill for the power. Some other drills to kind of play with. There's a crouching drill. Dempsey used to do the cage crouch all the time. There's a nice story about him, one of his training camps, in the ring, actually building a nice wire cage around, and actually with a low ceiling. I think some people say it's the lowest, depends on who you read, 5-foot high ceiling, some 5.5 feet. But the key is having to fight everything from down in here, throwing all your punches. Now, he didn't fight this low, but the key was to build up some endurance in the legs. Now, rather than going the trouble and the expense of building a cage like that, your partner's just going to feed everything low, and you've got to spend a few rounds playing the exact same game from here. You're not going to feel nearly as comfortable with it initially, but it's more about your leg conditioning than anything else. So it's still going to be the cross to the lead hook, but my job is to imagine my ceiling. I'm miming at this point. And this is one of those that initially doesn't feel too bad. Start playing, putting it up to 3-4 rounds in a crouching position. Then the legs, I don't care how many squats you're doing, your legs start reminding you, oh yeah, we're down here. Let's go back to standing back up. But you appreciate the conditioning and the endurance that it gives you. And it does make you, for those few times that you do step in and lunge at the body and go downstairs, you feel all the more comfortable for it. Now, we talked about lightweight drilling. We talked about heavyweight drilling, so we had speed and power. We also know there's outside fighting and infighting. Outside fighting, we're constantly wanting to be a fighter that stays out here. If you can put some power on it, fine. Speed is of the essence. But the main thing we're looking for here is the whole time he's moving around with us. In this case, he's going to throw a jab, occasionally a cross. Maybe sometimes I'll throw a jab, cross, lead, hook. But all these are going to be nice, open, and looping. I'm trying to play a nice outside game the entire time. I do not want to come into it. So we're here. Get the idea. I throw every punch, I move after each one, but I do not close the distance beyond the fact I step in close enough to land the punch, come right back out to the outside range. Several rounds right here. Get the idea. All the way on the outside. Now, as an infighter, we know what's supposed to be going on here. We talked about we got to come all the way in. I can either lean on my trainer's chest. We could put a body protector on this guy, go to work and bang the body in the entire way. Ringside makes a good body protector. Everlast actually has a good body protector as well. I'm more familiar with the ringside one. If you don't have the body protector, still yet, we talked about making this all about the focus pads. I can stay here, put my head into it, run back and forth, putting the uppercuts in, finding the shovel hooks, and constant work back and forth, pulling the punches on the arms, but working the inside the entire time. You can combine that outfighter with the infighter, working back and forth, with working from here. Anytime he closes the gloves up, it means for me to come in and work from the outside, go from out to in, back and forth. Anytime he feeds the gloves together, got to come to the inside. Then it's up to me to push off, come to the outside, or he might push me off. So you got outfighter in, vice versa. So we're up. You get the idea. Keep those drills running the entire time. I'll give you one more focus pad drill. There's many more you can play with, but this is called a mirror drill. And this is where you don't really get to choose your technique at all. So it's usually best if you have coach spar miss, but it will work with these focus pads. So whatever punch Mitch throws at me with the gloves on, he's gonna pull it so this plywood doesn't tear me up. For example, he might just throw a jab at me along these lines. And my job is to respond and throw the exact same thing back. So if he throws a jab, get the idea, but I just told him what to throw. Now he's gonna pick out whatever single punch he wants to throw, and I will respond to it and return the same punch. Get the idea. On and on. Now right now that was return 1 for 1. Now he can start throwing in combinations. Usually a good idea to not go any higher than a 3-point combination, because after that you get to a point where you spend so much of your time trying to memorize and read what he just threw at you, and you're slowing down your reaction time. So really a 1 for 1, 2 for 2 is great, 3 is probably the maximum on it, but more on that one. Single punch and return. All right. Get the idea. 1 for 1 return. He's picking it. See, the thing is, he could have been calling it the whole time, like at the beginning of the technique drill. He says, jab. I throw the jab for him. He says, cross. I throw that. He calls a long combination. He throws it. Or he can just throw the punches. I respond and return back. So that should be the stair-step manner to it, with the technique drill, then the checking drill, and then take everything through your lightweights, and then your heavyweight drill, crouching, outfighting, infighting, and then get to where, after your fighter really understands the rounds of playing it that way, where they're all blended together in the sense that you're not going to go, hey, we're going to do a focus pad drill, this technique drill, and then we're going to do a round of this, which is initially how you're going to play. Then it gets to a point where you're just in there. Sometimes he backs up, you're out fighting. He might yell, call lightweight right in the middle of it. He might check me at any point in this. He might call infighting. We're not going to run through the whole gamut, but the idea where the feeder controls what's going on with the game. Let's pick a standard combination and make it, well, whatever you want. You're the man.
So we do a jab cross hook.
Okay, jab cross hook. Okay, you get the idea. He called the combination, he checked me, he pulled me to the inside on an inside fight. A couple of times he threw a jab out there for a mirror drill, and I responded to that. We could have run through all those, put those in any order. But that's eventually where the game, between counter-punching flow drills and putting it together with the focus pads, your game really gets honed at that point. Okay, we are so close to the end of this thing, I can taste it. What we're going to talk about here at the very last is going to be sparring considerations. I'm not going to give you sparring footage right now, any sparring drills, because everything we've given you at this point has been gearing you towards sparring. Just give you some ideas on how to approach sparring. If you need more ideas than this, take a look at the Boxing Mastery for a little more talky-talk lecture, except in the printed form. Before you, if you're a coach or you're a fighter or a burgeoning fighter, a fighter with ambitions, before you jump right into the sparring game, you got to make sure you run through and have your fundamentals down, have your technique down, even have your intermediate advanced technique down, and make sure you approach every sparring game, a sparring match with a goal in mind. It's not necessarily just to beat your opponent, because remember, it's a sparring match. It is not a fight. A fight is where you totally try and dominate your opponent. Whenever you're sparring, you are sparring with a partner. That's why they're called sparring partners. You're trying to pick out one particular goal in each particular sparring round and figure out what you're going to emphasize at that point. Some ideas to keep in mind while you're sparring beyond what I just mentioned: play some isolation sparring games. Perhaps initially it might be an entire match of you and your partner playing jab for jab sparring. It's not just tit for tat. I don't throw a jab, my partner throws a jab. It's just that we're both limited to that tool. We know we have all these defensive games and how to counter punch and trigger back with this same jab. I might end up throwing 50 jabs before he even gets off one, or vice versa. The key is the jab is the only tool while you're running around throwing this technique. Then you can limit the other punches along the same way. You can limit it to combinations. It could be jab, cross, lead hook sparring the entire way, or you can work at cross purposes. Perhaps I have a jab cross as what my sparring tools are, and my partner is playing with a lead hook and a cross. You got to make sure you have your ref or an outside training partner paying close attention and making sure these rules aren't being violated. There's a tendency for some of the stuff to go out the window sometime. But again, by playing the isolation game, kind of gets you out of your comfort zone sometimes, forces you to work a tool that you may not initially feel like you're at your best with, kind of bring that to the forefront. The other idea to play with is play sparring with, put a speed control on it. You can play either with the 1 through 10 method or the quarter speed, half speed, 3/4, and full. And keep in mind, when you're sparring, always do your best to put on some safety gear. You're gonna have to have gloves, preferably hand wraps, headgear. You're gonna have mouthpieces in. Everything I've done throughout this entire video series has been pretty much with bad form because my head's up. I told you that right up front. I should have had headgear on. We're playing against these focus pads because those things are plywood. Caught me right here in the head. I don't even know if that reads on the screen, but it's fine. But so you have to have the headgear on. You want to play with safety the entire time. And whenever you start a match, though, if you call a particular drill intensity, a sparring intensity, let's say we're going to play at half. When we say half, that doesn't mean half speed. We're talking about half power. We're talking about the amount of impact. You always want to spar with full speed. Unless you're playing with an absolute beginner, you might be pulling back in your speed to give them an opportunity to read punches. But if we say half speed, playing at half, it means not going for knockout. Give them some impact, let them be jolted, let them know what's going on. But that's a way to stair-step yourself into the process, because fighting can be anxiety-provoking. It can worry you. So you got to make sure you gradually, by the time you get from quarter to half and 3/4, by the time it comes to full, you've done so many rounds with these previous speeds, you feel okay with it. So when you grab your partner, it's usually best as well if you can have a third party who can watch this and make sure that you both understand that maybe if you say half power, you both understand it. Invariably, one person, if they start feeling bested, might start climbing it up, and just have your partner constantly say, the outside party say, hey, bring it back down, walk it back down. If no one's paying attention, you got to break that match and restart it, because keep in mind, it's a sparring match and not a fight. Okay. In conclusion, we are at the end of this great, huge mammoth work here, right? I thank you for sticking through it. I'm glad you guys, hopefully you've got a lot of help out of this. There's a lot of information in here. I would find it hard to believe if you didn't find at least one concept or technique that is new to you, and hopefully you found a lot more than that. I want you to keep in mind how to use this product. Just like we have the Complete Grappler, that is not, it's a huge product, but it's not everything within the scientific wrestling system by any stretch of the imagination. Now, with the Complete Pugilist here, what we've done to you, we have presented to you the vast majority of the information in pugilism. I'm not saying it's 100% there. It may not be 90%, but I'm going to tell you this. We're probably around 80% of the wealth of material that is out there. So we're a Complete Grappler, even though it's a huge amount of material, it's still just scratching the surface. Don't get me wrong, it's a great product and it's meant to be worked in tandem with this for the NHP player. Here, though, we've got closer to being an 80% with what we meant to do. Now, again, how this fits into the matrix with the other boxing products we have. If you're looking at this complete pugilist product, it means you're saying, I'm serious about this. I really want to get this striking down. Then you pretty much have what you need in your possession, except I would add on the ABCs of NHB, because that's going to give you 40 counterpunching drills, where you only illustrated one 3-point counterpunching drill here. I would also, and you don't have to run out and grab these things right now. If you don't want to use them, fine. You've got more than a few years of material worth to work on here. You can pick up Boxing Mastery to get some more of the ideas behind some of the concepts of what we're doing here. But as far as straight tool, even if you never picked up those other products I talked about, this is going to serve you well for a lifetime. I really don't have any doubt about that. Now, if we're playing with someone who says, hey, I don't need all the information in the world, Extreme Boxing is the great primer to get you where you're going. But this one is meant to be primer through intermediate, pro ranks. For historical purposes, it's right here. And again, we talked about the only training gear we used was yourself, perhaps a mirror, shadow boxing, a partner, and focus pads. That does not mean that heavy bags do not have their place. They're a wonderful tool. Double-end bags, speed bags, maze ball, jump rope, a medicine ball. All these old school tools have their place. But again, this material would have been about double this size if we put all those drills in there. But what we tried to do is give you what pure boxing is. It's you and your opponent, you and yourself working solo, you doing road work. And that's what's going to make you really going to bring your game to the highest. Some people can knock the hell out of a heavy bag, but just can't spar. The drills we've given you here with the focus pads, that's what's going to get you going. Now again, what this is meant to be about this material is your cookbook. We refer to it constantly. There should be tons of material to work on here for years and years. If you have any questions about any of it, please let me know. You got the website information at the end of this material. I hope you had fun with it. I got to thank Mitch Thomas for standing out here with me and helping me work out through it. Anyone's ever boxed with me, help me hone the game. I got Mike and Dave behind the cameras for having us out here and let us get me talk on and on and on to get this out there. Again, thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah.